Before we can make sense of the arithmetic of decimals, we need to take a moment and think about just what they are. And what's going on behind the curtain with decimals is that decimals are a special kind of fraction. A decimal is a fraction, with denominator 1 or 10 or 100 or 1,000, a 1 followed by some number of zeros, the so-called powers of 10. We'll focus a little bit more on that phrase, powers of 10, in a future lesson. So when we have a decimal fraction, a fraction whose denominator is a power of 10, something like 226 hundredths, well, we have a shorthand way of writing it. We put this dot, called a decimal point, into the number, and that decimal point tells us what the denominator is. We see 2 digits to the right of the decimal point, and that tells us that we have 2 zeros in the denominator. Now, this may not be the way that you're used to thinking about decimals. You might be used to thinking about decimals more in terms of place values to the right of the decimal point. It turns out that this way of thinking about decimals makes all the arithmetic make sense. How do we get from this understanding, then, to the understanding that we're used to with the place values? Well, we need to use a technique that you may have seen in an arithmetic course at some point. We need to look at what's called the expanded form. In the expanded form, we just take each digit of a number out, and we write it as if it were its own number. So, for example, 226, right, that's 2 hundreds and 2 tens and 6 ones. Okay, what good does that do me? That means 226 hundredths is 200 hundredths plus 20 hundredths plus 6 hundredths. Right. Now I'm going to cancel common factors of 10 here. And I see that this number is 2 whole units plus 2 tenths plus 6 hundredths. So in my 2.26, right, this first digit represents whole units. This first digit to the right of the decimal point represents this 2 tenths. So this first digit after the decimal point is the tenths place. And then the 6 represents 6 hundredths. So this next place is the hundredths place. Going off to the right of the decimal point, the names of the places follow the same pattern as the places going off to the left, except they have this th at the end that indicates that they're the denominators of fractions. Right, one common question about decimals is, why is the very first place after the decimal point the tenths place? Why isn't there a oneths place? Well, looking at this expanded form, we can see the answer. Right? Oneths would be denominator 1. but denominator 1 is already whole units. So tenths is the first place after the decimal point because, well, 10 is the smallest denominator that's going to get us digits after the decimal point.